a player, Joey Barton was one of the most controversial men in football. Outspoken, aggressive, tempestuous, rarely out of the headlines. As a manager, it wasn't much different. This week, Barton stirred up a sexism scandal by launching a furious broadside against female pundits analysing men's football on television. It all began with a post saying women shouldn't be talking with any kind of authority in the men's game. Come on, let's be serious. It's a totally different game. I cannot take a thing they say seriously in the men's arena. Well, since then, he's been called a sexist, misogynist dinosaur. But is he saying out loud what some men, maybe many men, are thinking as well? Well, Joey Barton joins me live now. Joey, great to see you. Thank you very much for joining me.
Piers, nice to see you. You okay? Looking well?
You've had an interesting day. Take me back to the initial post that you put up on Twitter. Clearly inflammatory, but that's your way. Did you expect the reaction that you were going to get?
No, well, it's part of the you know, when you say what sometimes you're thinking, it can obviously lead to, you know, a reaction. It wasn't entitled, you know, I didn't do that. I've seen in my game where, you know, I do feel, Piers, I have enough credibility to say I'm probably a bona fide expert. This kind of tokenism creeping in, especially when it comes to, you know, it's ruining my experience of both the game and obviously the journalistic standards. You know, it's not nothing to do with sexism at all.
I mean, what is your particular complaint? Is it that women have not played the game to the highest level and therefore they're not qualified to talk about it?
Piers, look, I'm against tokenism and I'm against you know, poor journalistic standards, especially when it comes to the game I love, which is football. You know, I know it's everyone's game, you know, but there's two slightly different variants. Obviously, the men's game and the women's game, and all of a sudden, if you speak out in favour of you know, saying a men's game, people come to you and, you know, I'm getting accused of being right wing because I've said what clearly a lot of people are thinking about the journalistic standards of some of the, you know, female commentary and co-coms and punditry that I'm seeing in the game that I feel, as I say, I think I'm a bona fide expert in.
I mean, you said today, I stand by everything I've said on women commenting and co-coms on the men's football, like me talking about knitting or netball, way out of my comfort zone. We've gone too far. You can't watch a game now without hearing the nonsense. Any man who says otherwise is an absolute fart parcel. I mean, do you accept that some of your language here was a little incendiary?
Well, that is X or Twitter, as it was once known. That is what those platforms are kind of used for, as we all use them. It's just a tool. And it leads to this debate, or, you know, I don't want to see sexism in football. But if we don't talk about this properly and debate this properly, this is just going to further rise and ruin, as I say, the experience of watching, you know, elite level men's football. And as I say, everywhere you turn now, there's for what I would deem as an unqualified opinion, commentating, pontificating about the sport I love, and it's ruining my experience of it. And it's to fuel this woke agenda, and if we're not careful, we're going to increase sexism massively, because it's got to be a true meritocracy, Piers. We have to have people who are
right, but Joey, let me
ask
you again, because you haven't actually answered that
to do those roles.
Right, but the question that I asked you, which you haven't answered yet, what is it about the women that you think is inappropriate? Is it because they have not played the game at the highest level of men's football?
No, Piers, as you know with me, I'll never not answer the question. No, it's absolutely not that. It's about, as I say, you have to be there on merit. Like, you can't be there to fit this woke agenda that we've currently got going on in society. You know, you don't have to have played the game. You know, lots of managers haven't played the game at a high level. Lots of good commentary people haven't played the game at a high level. Kind of Mark Chapman, Rory Smiths of this world. But they've earned the right via, hard work and over a prolonged period to get into that space. Obviously, it helps to talk about the men's game. If you've played that men's game, the higher the level, arguably the better, because it gives you a unique experience. There's a lot of similarities between both sports, Piers, absolutely no danger in that. But the men's game is just played at a completely different speed, with a completely different skill set needed, and for someone to stand there and say, I would have done this in this situation, or he's made a mistake there, who have no experience of that. And it's not just one or two, it's been taken over, and it ruins the experience for most men. And it's the men's game, and I feel I don't want to come across as sexist, absolutely not. I've got a wonderful daughter, wonderful wife, my grandmother, a big matriarch. I want women at men's games. At Bristol Rovers we had Hair Game 2, and it was a great initiative to get women in the stadiums. But if we're going to talk about the technical nuances of elite level football, and we want to educate the audience, which is the punditry, co-commentary role, then we must do that with the most credible people, not people who tick boxes or fill quotas. And I do feel that at this moment in time.
Okay, but let me put two names to you.
Within
let
that
me
spot.
put two names to you. Well, three names, right? You've got someone like Alex Scott, who won a World Cup as a women's player, right, which has eluded our men's team. I'm sorry, I'm being told she didn't win a World Cup, but she certainly competed at a very high level for England for a very long time. You've got Laura Woods, who's one of the best football presenters in the game. She's a woman. She's been furious today about what you said. Why should people like that be excluded from the men's game?
No, I'm absolutely not saying that. I'm saying if you've earned the right to be there with credibility and hard work over a prolonged period, you should absolutely be there. I've got a daughter. I want her, if she would like to, Peter, to have the opportunity to commentate or co-commentate on a men's game, the men's football game, if that's what she chooses. But she should be there because she's worked incredibly hard over a prolonged period and has got a great skill set, not just because she's a woman and to fill a quota and this woke agenda, this tokenism. We have to be very, very careful. Look at what it's doing to other sports. And, I don't want to see the sport that I love ruined. And my experience as a man, it's ruining. I can't watch the telly now and a lot of the information is technically incorrect that these so-called experts, women experts, are saying about the men's game. They're factually incorrect.
But Joey, someone like Alex Scott, right, who has had tremendous success as a player, been very successful as a television presenter, is she not qualified? Does she not meet your criteria?
To talk about the men's game?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, she hasn't played in it. She hasn't played in any games. I've played in and been involved as a manager in 657 professional men's games. Now, the women's game's a fantastic game at the minute. It's thriving. I've never seen as many opportunities. The England team wins stuff at that in the women's game. I think Sander Weigmann's done a great job raising the awareness for the women's game. It's phenomenal. But the men's game and the women's game in this country are different. One's about 200 years old and one's about 30, 40 years old. If you go back to kind of Doncaster Bells and the inception for women, I've lived through it. I've played football with women. I've no problem with women.
But Joey, here's my
football
problem with the argument, right? If you look at people like John Motson, greatest commentator I've ever seen, Barry Davis, right up there, Clive Tilsley, Des Lynam, right? None of them ever played professional football. By your criteria, why are they more qualified than someone like Alex Scott, who has at least played for her country many times? Why are they more qualified having not played professional football? In the end, the rules of football are the same, whether you're male or female. They're exactly the same rules.
They're the same rules, but it's a complete... Football's about a lot more than rules, Piers. It's time and space and velocity and impact and challenges and the games are at two different speeds. It's almost like if I decide Sunday I'm going to go to Formula One and I start saying, listen, I would have done this if I was Lewis Hamilton in this corner and I'd have done that. And rightly Coulthard or Damon Hill or Eddie Jordan or whatever would rightly turn around and say, what are you on about? And I'd say, well, I drive a car. I've got a driving licence. Yeah, but one's going at 200 mile an hour and one's going at maybe 80, 70 mile an hour tops in this country. The different speeds. So to stand there and pontificate with authority and actually when it's factually incorrect, it's infuriating because I love high journalistic standards, and I think we're compromising it with this tokenism. And if the girls
let me ask
and the
you a
women are
question.
good enough to get there, it should be on a meritocracy. It shouldn't be on this tokenism because they're filling a quota and we need to get someone in there, because that will lead even further to the sexism that we all want to avoid. We want it to be diverse and inclusive, but it has to be credible. We're talking about the best product we output in this country is Premier League football, the elite level football.
Okay, but Joey, let me ask you.
We've got to protect them.
You've never
They need
played,
a timeout.
to my knowledge, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've never played Champions League or World Cup football. So does that qualify you to talk, notwithstanding you're a very good professional footballer, does that qualify you by your yardstick to comment on Champions League football or World Cup football?
Yes, everybody's entitled to comment. I can talk about Premier League football, I can talk about taekwondo, but it's about credibility and journalistic standards rather than this. As I say, this tokenism should be there on merit, not for quotas. And there's loads of women managers. Emma Hayes, fantastic. Serena Weigman, we've spoken about. If they come across and managing the men's game, I have no problem with that. If they're the best candidate. Similar with, there is some female pundits out there who are capable and have earned credibility over a long period. But also there's lots at this moment. I don't want to name names. I'm not here to name names. There's lots of good people. But also the majority are poor and the standards are poor. And it's factually incorrect information. Well, I heard the comments from the Liverpool Fulham game about, the Endo goal. The Japanese boy Endo scores. And the commentator was female, co-com's female. And she talks about Endo scores with his laces. Now, anyone who watched that who had any knowledge of football, seen that Endo scored with the side of his foot. But no one, because it was female co-coms and female commentator, no one said, hang on a minute, that didn't happen. So if you're a young, impressionable person who doesn't know and you're coming for high journalistic standards and content to educate and inform, which is what we're meant to do, if we're in those spots, then we have to correct those mistakes. And if it goes unchecked, it pulls the standard down, and we can't allow that to happen for this woke agenda.
Did you, for argument's sake,
it's taking over everything.
Did you think that Alan Hansen was a good commentator?
He was fantastic.
Right, so when he said they'll never win it with kids about Manchester United, and they won it with kids, he made a terrible mistake. I mean, does that discredit him?
Who hasn't made a mistake? We all make mistakes, but over a prolonged period, you have to have more successes than failures. So to get the opportunity, and this is what we have to be careful of, all those great commentators you mentioned before, Motti, God rest his soul, brilliant at what he did, their opportunities are going to be restricted because ex-female players are getting those opportunities. So we've got to be careful here because, I want a healthy game where women can go to the football and enjoy it, which they are. I've never seen more women, Piers, have football matches than what I currently see. Or women's opportunities within football. And that's fantastic. And long may that continue. We need to be incredibly inclusive right across the board. But it has to be for people who are good enough, who've earned the right to be there. I don't care where you're from, how many games you've played. But you have to have a body of work that's credible to get you there, not just you get an opportunity because you fill a quota or you tick a box. And we've got to say, call it for what it is. And the world's going crazy.